Srila Buddha. Namo tassa, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so I think maybe I passed over a couple of suttas, which, I mean, they follow a fairly standard template according to which the Buddha is in a conversation with the Buddha. The Buddha is in a conversation with a Brahmin, and the Brahmin speaks about how we are possessed of the threefold knowledge. We're masters of the threefold knowledge, and they take the mastery of the threefold knowledge to be knowledge of the Vedas, and then the Buddha speaks of a different kind of threefold knowledge, the recollection of past lives, the divine I, and the knowledge of the destruction of the asavas. So we'll resume our examination of the Anguttara Nikaya with Sutta number 60. Here the Buddha is in conversation with a Brahmin by the name of Sangharava. Sangharava. Okay, so now this Brahmin comes to the Buddha and he says to him that we Brahmins perform sacrifices and we instruct others to perform sacrifices. And so one who performs sacrifices himself and instructs others to perform sacrifices engages in a meritorious practice that extends to many people. That is one based on sacrifice. Okay, but now he goes on and he says, but one who leaves his family and goes out into the household life and goes forth from the household life into homelessness is devoting his efforts only to the cultivation, purification, and liberation of one person. Okay, so he tames only himself, calms only himself, and leads only himself to Nibbana. In such a case, he engages, at least he admits it's a meritorious practice, but it extends to only one person, that is oneself. Oneself as one who has gone forth into homelessness. You know, we could just update this conversation 2,500 years, 2,600 years, and we have an honest businessman comes to the Buddha and says, one who engages in business benefits himself and his family, and also if he's successful in business, he earns enough of a profit so that he could use some of that profit for charity. But you, Venerable, who have gone forth into homelessness, are benefiting only yourself. And you, Venerable, are taming yourself, calming yourself, bringing yourself to Nibbana. And so, compared to the philanthropic businessman, your practice is much superior. Actually, I have to say, in some of the Mahayana sutras, this argument is used, almost the same words, against the followers of the Shravaka vehicle. So it said that the bodhisattvas are those who are benefiting countless sentient beings, but those who follow the vehicles of the Shravakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas. It takes the exact same wording of taming only one person, calming only one person, bringing to nirvana only one person, oneself. Okay, so now the Buddha replies. So he's going to his usual way of questioning the interrogator about the matter. So he says, what do you think? Here, a Tathagata arises in the world is thus come. This is the path, this is the way. Practicing in accordance with this path, I myself have realized with direct knowledge the supreme goal of the spiritual life, and I make it known to others. Come, he's talking to others, you too practice in this way. Practicing accordingly, you too will realize the supreme goal of the spiritual life and dwell in it. And thus the teacher, that's the Buddha himself, teaches this Dhamma to others, teaches this Dhamma and others practice in accordance with it. And then there are many hundreds, many thousands, many hundreds of thousands who do so, I guess, who practice accordingly. So what do you think? When this is the case, is that act of going forth a meritorious practice that extends to one person only or to many people? And of course, the Brahmin answers, he says, when that is the case, this is a meritorious practice that extends to many people, that is one based on the going forth. Okay, so, but here you see the Buddha has answered the Brahmin's criticism with reference to himself. But what about those hundreds and thousands who are following the Buddha by practicing accordingly? They're not becoming world-renowned, universal teachers. So does the Brahmin's criticism apply to them, to those people? Why not? Do we have any answers? No? Let's take somebody not world-renowned, but um, say a relatively unknown monk living in a kuti, a little cottage, practicing his meditation. Following the teachings. And okay, but somebody, this Brahminic critic, or not to speak of the Brahmins, but a man of society today looking at him will say, look, he's just benefiting himself, reaping the rewards of the teaching, practicing in his little kuti. But he's not teaching anyone. Husband? Yeah, okay, that's one point you could bring out, that maybe he's still in a relatively junior stage of practice. And so before he could start teaching others, he has to cultivate himself. Then when he reaches some level of accomplishment or maturity, then he can teach others. Any other thoughts? Yeah, that's true, that's true. Yeah, it's very true, actually. Okay, so you could say he's setting an example for others. Any other thoughts? Say it. It's good to use the microphone. Then the people on the internet can hear.
My thought is on emptiness, and if we really understand that, we're empty of a separate self, and one person, it looks like one person, but the one contains the all contains the one.
Actually, that's a very true point, actually.
So I feel there's a lot of benefit.
Yeah, my own idea is that you could say that there's a physical manifestation of teaching, by physical and verbal, by getting up in a teacher's position and giving discourses. But there's another way in which I would say like streams of consciousness are interconnected at an invisible level. And so somebody who is generating very powerful, wholesome states of consciousness is making a positive input into the reservoir of consciousness, which could be flowing out into other streams of consciousness.
Sure, I think that's why when we send metta,
Yeah,
others may not know about it, but it goes
yeah,
out there.
yeah,
Same thing, if I practice
yeah,
diligently, something happens.
yeah. Somebody else had something?
Now, isn't it better than just to work for the final liberation of one being rather than the temporary alleviation of suffering for many beings in one life?
Say again.
The monastic is working for the final liberation,
Yeah.
which is greater than temporarily alleviating suffering for many people in one
Okay,
life.
yeah, okay, so you could say that, but still somebody could say, okay, the monastic or the contemplative is working diligently for the liberation of one person, but it's the final liberation rather than bringing mundane benefits to many people. But still, one wants to give some kind of, one doesn't want to diminish the importance of providing mundane benefits to sick people, poor people, hungry people, disadvantaged people.
Yeah, well, it's possible to do both
Yeah.
at once.
Bowie, you look like you were going to say something?
I would think the criticism is valid, but as long as a monastic is not successful, so that's why the criticism from the society is, for those people, it's valid. That's why for monastics, they have to have patience or endurance, but the goal is good. But on the other hand, for those business people who might succeed or who might not be succeed, so criticism is applicable to both sides. So I think we should respect both, because both, when they have not achieved their final goals, whether it's mundane or the super mundane, as long as they are striving
Yeah.
sincerely and diligently, both of them should be respected. And also, those and the enlightened, noble people comes from ordinary monastics to begin with, and those people who are still striving for their own good, I think it still should be respected, because they set an example, and also it gives the hope
It gives hope.
Yeah, for to show that, well, when they are still in the progress of striving. It's very, how do I say that? We should respect them because it's very precious.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll continue now. There to be signs of spiritual accomplishment in a monastic, the ability to perform to display superhuman wonders of psychic potency. This is probably referring to what's called the iddhis. So what are some of these iddhis? Psychic powers, supernormal powers. Yeah, but I think here it wouldn't include, you see, the knowledge of past lives and knowledge of the passing away and rebirth of beings, those would be abhinyas. They're sort of super knowledges.
Yeah, but there's also the diving in the earth
Yeah,
thing.
that is an iddhi. Let's just say the expression that the Pali text uses.
And being able to appear and reappear, I think, in different realms.
Yeah, okay. He uses iddhi pati haryang. So these are the iddhis. The iddhis include things like diving into the earth. And some of the others, yeah, flying through the sky like a bird.
Isn't it appearing and reappearing in various realms?
Yeah, appearing and disappearing. That's mentioned as the twin miracle, but in the standard list of the iddhis, it's not included. Yeah, walking on the water without sinking as though it were solid earth. And you said something? Yeah, passing through walls and mountains without being impeded. And yeah, reaching up and touching the sun and moon.
And Bhante, does this include those 4 types of concentration? Like, I don't know, like 欲勤行观, those 4 ED, samadhi, 4 types of samadhi. Yeah. That
Say it
chant,
again in Chinese.
Chant 欲勤行观. Yeah. The ED, the chanta, for efforts and investigation.
No, those are the bases. Those are the bases for psychic power. Those are the iddhipadas. So those are the means of generating that kind of samadhi that one can then use for the iddhis. But the iddhis themselves, I think the only one that so far hasn't been mentioned is the ability to multiply one's body so it becomes many, and then bringing all of those many bodies together back to become one. We have already touching the sun and moon. And then I think the last one is exercising mastery over the body as far as the Brahma world. Okay, so basically those are the iddhis. And so the conversation was going place. You know, in the past there were just a few monks, a small number of monks, but they were exercising the iddhis. But now there are many more monks, but fewer monks practicing the iddhis. And then I have to say, even in popular Buddha circles today, like in some of the Asian countries, like this is what the people are looking for in an accomplished monk. And they'll spread rumors. Oh, our Bhante. Oh, we were speaking to him in Colombo, and our friends in Kandy met him the same afternoon. Of course, what they didn't realize is that he was in Colombo at 1 o'clock. Then he took a quick train up to Kandy and got there by 4 o'clock. Okay, so you could see that these people, these members of the royal court, for them, what they esteem and regard as worthy and the mark of spiritual accomplishment is the ability to exercise these psychic powers. And I said that's true today and true in ancient times. Okay, but that is not really what the Buddha places a high priority on. And so the Buddha continues and he says, now he's going to continue with speaking about the three kinds of wonders, or three kinds of, even we could translate this as miracles. The Pali word you could see here, it's patiharya. So that's like a performance of some wonder or miracle. And then the miracle of psychic powers is iddhi patiharya. And now the Buddha says that there are these three kinds of wonders, or three kinds of miraculous achievements. So one is the wonder of psychic powers. The second is the wonder of mind reading. And the third is the wonder of instruction, or the miracle of teaching. Yeah, this just gives the Pali expressions. Okay, so now that here, actually, we have the different kinds of psychic powers. So here the monk wields these various kinds of psychic powers. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He passes through the wall, even through a mountain, without being hindered. As though through space, he dives in and out of the earth. He walks on water without sinking. He travels through the sky like a bird. He touches the sun and moon. He exercises mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. So we got all of those. So that's the wonder of psychic power. Then there's the miracle or the wonder of mind reading. And so one who by means of some clue is able to declare, you were thinking this, you were thinking that, you were in such and such a state of mind. And he makes many declarations, and they come out to be exactly so, not otherwise. Okay, so this is one who reads minds on the basis of some clue. Then there's another one who not on the basis of a clue, but he hears the sound of people or of spirits or of deities speaking, I guess telling him what the thought of the other person is. And then he's able to tell the other person, this is what you were thinking, this was your state of mind. Okay, and then the third one, and this is a little puzzling. Okay, so is he able to declare the state of mind of somebody, but not on the basis of a mark or a clue, not by hearing the sound of people, spirits, or deities, but he hears the sound of the diffusion of thought as someone is thinking about some matter, and then he declares, that was what you were thinking, that was your state of mind. And even if he makes many declarations of mind reading like that, it turns out that they're exactly so and not otherwise. So this is probably what we would consider to be the real psychic power of mind reading. You're not picking up on a visual clue from the person, facial expression, You're not getting any hints from other people, not even spirits or invisible deities, but one is able to read, say, the vibrations of the other person's thoughts or state of mind. And in that way, you know what they're thinking or what they're feeling. Okay, then the next case is one who, even without relying on that sound of the diffusion of thought, but this is the direct mind reading. So with his own mind, he encompasses the mind of one who has attained a concentration without thought and examination. That is somebody who is in the second jhana or the higher jhanas, in which there's no vitaka and vichara, and he understands that this person's mental activities are so disposed that immediately afterward, that is after he comes out from that samadhi, he will think this thought. And then it turns out that that is the case. And even if he makes many declarations like this, it turns out to be exactly in that way. Okay, so that is the wonder or the miracle of mind reading. It seems of these, the two that are somewhat astounding, real exercises of psychic power are just the last two. Because here you're not being told the person's state of mind, not picking up any hint, but one is hearing the sound of the diffusion of thought, or sort of these would be like picking up the thought vibrations. And then the last is directly reading the state of mind. And then what is the miracle of instruction, the wonder of instruction? Here, somebody instructs others, think in this way, not in that way, attend to this, not to that, abandon this, and enter and dwell in that. So that is called the wonder of instruction. Okay, so then the Buddha says, of these three wonders, these three miracles, which appeals to you as the most excellent and sublime? Okay, so now the Brahmin is going to say, okay, first of the psychic wonders of psychic power. So he says, only the one who performs this wonder experiences it, and it occurs only to him. I don't know if that's the case, actually. Wouldn't it be true if somebody is flying through the sky, other people will see it? Yeah?
Is he speaking of the impact of what he's saying is like a magical trick, and contrasting it with the effect of instruction, which, yes, other people see him flying through the sky, but
Yeah.
it doesn't impact.
That's a good point. Yeah, that could be the point here. That it, in some way, yeah, that it has an impact only on that person who's performing it.
Right. And there's growth in the person who is taught.
Yeah.
His mind,
Yeah.
his or her mind is
Yeah.
affected.
Though actually the Buddha, you see in the suttas that he did use on occasion psychic powers, supernormal powers, in order to overcome the resistance of those who were potential disciples but who were not yet ripe enough. So maybe the classic case would be the case of Angulimala, that was the serial killer. And so the Buddha went to the jungle where Angulimala was living, and he knew that Angulimala had the potential for arhatship, but he was a violent serial killer, so very dangerous. So the Buddha went, and when Angulimala saw the Buddha enter the forest, he wanted to catch up to him in order to kill him. And the Buddha was just walking at a normal pace, and Angulimala was running after the Buddha, but as fast as Angulimala ran, always the distance between them remained the same. And so finally Angulimala then gave up and realized that the Buddha had come to the forest just for his sake, and then he got transformed and then asked the Buddha for instruction. And then there's also the famous case mentioned, not in the sutta, I think, but in the commentary. There was this royal courtesan or consort named Kema, the consort of King Bimbisara, who was very beautiful and very proud of her beauty. And then the Buddha realized that she had, the potential for arhatship, but she was so proud of her beauty, she wasn't yet ripe for instruction. And so what the Buddha did was, through his psychic power, he created this image or figure of a very beautiful woman, young woman, 16 years old, we call it a girl now, a young girl standing behind him with a fan, fanning him. And then Kema, when she came to pay homage to the Buddha, she saw this beautiful girl fanning the Buddha and thought, wow, that girl is more beautiful than I am. And then the Buddha speeded up the life process of that girl. So within minutes, she went from being 16 years old, and within half a minute, she's 21 years old. Another minute, she's 36 years old. Another minute, she's 45 years old. Another minute, she's 60 years old. Another minute, she's 75 years old. Another minute, she's 85 years old. Another minute, and she collapses to the ground dead. And then the body starts decaying, turning into a skeleton. And then Kema realizes the impermanence of her own beauty. And then she becomes, I think she, according to the commentary, she achieves arhatship right on the spot after watching that. Yeah. She became the chief disciple with respect to panya, with respect to wisdom.
Isn't there also the story of Buddha ascending to the Deva realm and teaching the Abhidhamma to the Devas like his mother?
Yeah, this comes in the commentaries, yeah. But anyway, when the Buddha performs these miraculous feats, it's not to show off, not to win, to win followers, but to break down somebody's resistance and to open their minds to instruction. And there's actually a rule in the Vinaya that a monastic is not to make a display or claims, can't make false claims to psychic powers, and even can't make true claims to psychic powers to one who is not fully ordained. And is not supposed to make public displays, I think. Anyway, the Buddha criticized, there was an occasion, it's mentioned in the Vinaya Pitaka, where a householder had this very precious, what was it made out of, that sandalwood bowl that he wanted to test who amongst the ascetics have psychic powers. So he put this very precious sandalwood bowl up on the top of a pole. So it's way beyond the ability of a person to reach by stretching up their arm. And he said, whichever ascetic, he made a kind of proclamation throughout the town, whatever ascetic is able to go up that pole by psychic powers and take the bowl belongs to him. Okay, so then the way it's presented, in the Vinaya Pitaka, the story in the Vinaya Pitaka, in a way of sort of denigrating the ascetics of the other sects. They come to see the bowl, and each one claims, I will go up and get it, I will go up and get it. And then they try to go up and get it, and they're not able to rise up of their own accord. And then they tell the people, oh, I'm not feeling so well today, therefore I can't go up to get it. But then one of the Buddhist monks, I think it's Palinda Vacha, he comes along, then he uses his psychic power to go up and get the bowl, and he takes it, and then he's shown a lot of veneration by that layperson. But then report of this reaches the Buddha, and then the Buddha calls that monk to him and all of the other monks, and he scolds that monk, and he says that you're showing off your psychic powers just like a striptease artist might sort of expose her body in order to win the admiration of the men. And then I think he lays down some rule about that one shouldn't make a display of psychic powers. Okay, anyway, so the Brahmin says, this wonder seems to me like a magical trick. And speaking about magical tricks, maybe you know recently, within the last century, there was a Hindu sannyasi named Satya Sai Baba, who was supposed to perform all of these miraculous feats, like he would like open up, he would take his fist, his hand, show everybody his open hand, close the hand, and then go like this, then open it again, and he would have maybe a wristwatch in the hand, or medallion with an image of himself, and he would reach into his mouth, he would go, then he would pull out a ball, it's a golden ball, and show it to people. And because of this, he won esteem and respect and admiration all over India and all over the world. So I have to say, even in Sri Lanka, amongst our Sinhalese Buddhists, there were groups that were going to India to pay homage to Satya Sai Baba. But then somebody took a video after the age of the video cameras came into vogue. They took a video of Satya Sai Baba, and then they broke it down or ran it in slow motion, going frame by frame, and they showed that Sai Baba would be very quickly, you don't see it with the naked eye, but reaching into the sleeve or reaching into a pocket someplace and pulling out these items. I don't know how he could do it so quickly without people seeing it. But it shows in the video that were taken. And then his reputation, well, a lot of people still followed him, but amongst a few discerning people, his reputation collapsed. So with enough cleverness, you could perform these magic tricks. Does anybody know of Darrell? I think the name is Darrell Brown. Darren Brown. You could find videos of him on YouTube. I think it's Darren Brown. He's able to perform what seem like these inconceivable, wonderful tricks, like to tell somebody what they're thinking, to tell somebody, to describe the pet that they might have at home. And yet the way he does this, he'll explain, it's not by any kind of psychic powers, but he is able to pick up on very, very subtle hints that a person will drop unawares and determine what their thoughts are, what their birthday might be, or at least what horoscope they come under, and other things. You could look this up and see. It's been years since I looked at his videos, maybe about 10 years, but the video should still be up there. Okay, so that's the magic trick of psychic powers. Okay, then also the Brahman says, with respect to those who are able to read another state of mind in these various ways, he says, this too seems to me like a magical trick. But when someone performs the wonder by which he instructs others, think how to think, what to attend to, what to abandon, and what to enter and dwell in, he says, this wonder appeals to me as the most excellent and sublime of those three wonders. Okay, then the Brahman continues, and he says, we consider, the we means himself, I consider Master Gautama to be one who can perform these three wonders, that he's able to perform the wonders of psychic powers, that he is able to read the thoughts of others, and that he performs this miracle of instruction. And then the Buddha makes a comment that I found difficult to understand. The Pali reads, asajja upaniya vacha bhasita. So asajja really means something like attacking. And upaniya, wow, there's a typographical error that I should come out. So many times proofread and never caught it until now. So upaniya means literally coming close, like approaching. And then the commentary sort of explains this expression as mama gune gattetva. Gateti is like to hit or to strike against. And so I rendered this as your words are prying and intrusive. It's a little puzzling why the Buddha should use even these expressions in regard to the words of the Brahman. Anybody have any ideas? I'm not saying that I have a fixed answer in my mind, so you don't have to think that I'm testing you by asking that question.
Perhaps the Buddha is annoyed with this problem after he's already refused to enter another 3 times, and now he's sort of obfuscating.
But he's saying that about the words of the Brahman, that the words are asajja, that they're sort of almost like attacking, or sort of a bit like aggressive, but they don't seem to be so aggressive to me. It seems that he's praising the Buddha. That he meant it aggressively. Yeah, initially I thought that he might have said this somewhat sarcastically. It's a sarcastic tone that you don't see in the printed word. Anyway, I don't have a definite answer to this. Were you going to say something?
I don't know, maybe he finds that, like, from what happened earlier,
Yeah,
just the Brahmin just praising and worshiping Ananda,
yeah.
you might find that he's just like a sycophant, like just going along with it.
It could be. Could be.
Does not approve that Ananda.
It could be. Okay, anyway, the Buddha says, nevertheless, I will answer you. I do wield the various kinds of psychic power. I do encompass my mind, with my mind, the minds of one who has entered a state of samadhi, and I'm able to tell what that person's going to think. And I do instruct others, think in this way and not in that way, attend to this, not in that way, abandon this and attain that. Okay, then the Brahmin asks, is there even one other monk apart from you, from Master Gotama, who can perform these three wonders, these three miracles? And then the Buddha says, not just 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500, but even more who can perform these three wonders. And then the Brahma says, where are those monks presently dwelling? And the Buddha says, right here in this Bhikkhu Sangha. And then the Brahmin, finally, he says, excellent, excellent, and he goes for refuge for life. Yeah, no, Venerable Ananda would not yet have that ability. Ananda? No, no, not, I don't see it in that way at all. Say again. Maybe take the, where is the microphone?
Crying.
Yeah, I asked, why did the Buddha say that that the Brahman's words were sort of like attacking and offensive and aggressive?
Yeah. Because this Brahman implies that Ananda doesn't have the ability.
But the Brahman didn't say anything like that about with reference to Ananda. He just said that I consider you, Gotama, to be one who can perform these three wonders. There's no sort of reference to Ananda here.
Okay.
And so then the Brahmin says that your words are somewhat offensive and aggressive. Your words in regard to me are aggressive and offensive. And maybe because the Brahmin is sort of, in a way, like almost asking a little bit indirectly whether you can perform these psychic powers. Like if somebody comes up to me and says, can you perform these psychic powers? Can you perform psychic powers? We always face like a dilemma. Like if I'm truthful and I say, no, I can't perform these psychic powers, then the person's face will drop. He'll shake his head and think, more than 40 years a monk? And you can't perform these psychic powers? My faith in Buddhism is collapsing. What have you been doing with your life as a monk? 40 years and you can't even walk on water without sinking? Our Shifu can do so. And yet if you say, yes, I can do it, then you're lying. And if he says, well, show me. And so easy way for me to wiggle out is to say your words are offensive. Your words are getting too personal. Your inquiry is too personal. Maybe that is actually the implication. Yeah, exactly. That's the way it's rendered, yeah. So if you don't come to the Buddha and ask directly, can you perform these miraculous wonders? Okay, any questions or comments about anything in the sutta? Yes? What is your name again? Don.
There were two things that I thought were interesting in the end. One, it seemed to me that the Buddha wasn't necessarily reading his mind psychically, but he was dealing with this Brahmin in a way that showed, I thought, insight into what was going on in his mind.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
the way that the Brahmin was deflecting,
yeah, yeah,
the Buddha decided to approach him in another way, and
yeah.
perhaps he discerned that there was something else in his mind, which is there was this conversation that he was privy to
Yeah,
in the court, which was creating some doubt.
yeah,
So he asked about that, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
sort of learned, and then he dealt with that.
yeah,
And then I also thought it was interesting that at the end it returns
yeah, yeah.
to the theme at the very beginning,
Exactly,
which is
yeah, yeah.
what is the use of
Yeah,
what a student does. And when he says that there's not just 100, 200, 300, etc., he impresses him, and he really answers his first question
yeah, yeah,
about the impact, because
Yeah.
after all, these bhikkhus have not only psychic powers and
Yeah.
can read minds, but they also teach,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
what impresses the Brahmin most.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's a very, very good point. That the ending of the sutta actually reverts back to the problem that the Brahmin presents at the beginning of the sutta. Like one who goes forth into homelessness is benefiting only himself. Okay, and now the Buddha, in his first answer to the Brahmin, shows that he himself, having gone forth and reached enlightenment, is now teaching, thousands and thousands of people. So that is sort of like one reply to the Brahmin's doubt, but now sort of after weaving their way through these different types of wonders, now the Buddha gets back at the very end and shows that there's not just one, but there are more than 100, 200, 300, more than 500 in this Sangha who are able to teach, who have reached that final goal and are able to teach others. Yeah, very, very good points. And anybody else? Okay, Venerable Mangala.
It's just my question is about, as people who might not have ever seen people do these miraculous things.
Yeah.
And just like the story you were telling us about Sad Baba, who was able to manifest things, and turns out just to be magic tricks,
Yeah.
But as people of faith and who want to believe that these kinds of things happen because it's part of our faith, we're willing to delude ourselves, because we want to believe.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do we go about picking what we want to believe? Because a lot of people just are so willing to just accept it. Like how do we have faith and dedication without necessarily just believing everything out of blind faith?
I think what I would say is that the Buddha doesn't place that much emphasis upon relying upon miraculous occurrences as a guarantee for one's faith, but he bases more on, or he puts more emphasis upon examining the teaching in order to have faith in the Dhamma based on, let's say, the clarity, consistency, truthfulness, and beneficial results that will come from practicing the Dhamma. So that is the basis of faith in the Dhamma. And these various miracles, they might occur, they might not occur, but that is not the basis for faith.
Yeah, not to brag or anything like that, but whether these things really happened and people are really able to do these kinds of things, it doesn't change my faith in the Dhamma at all.
Yeah,
because I find the practicality, the pragmatism, those are still miraculous and amazing things, and the honesty.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people are just, oh my gosh, so-and-so was able to fly in the air, and a huge crowd of people flock to that person's camp because they're so amazing.
Well, I also don't think it's wrong to investigate if there is a monk who everyone claims can do this, to go and look at him and, investigate for yourself whether or not he can actually fly through the air or dive through the earth.
Amazing that even in this time and age of cell phones, I still haven't seen any yogis flying through the air.
Yeah, I imagine if there are people who have the miracles, I don't think they want to be around everyone with their cell phones and society. I imagine they would isolate and, they do still come
Though I
out
have to
every once in a
admit, like
while.
one of the things that sort of got me into a spiritual path, sort of the things that sort of broke down my materialistic view of the world, where everything has to be grounded in solid science, was a book, maybe published decades ago, very, very popular book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And he relates stories about many of the miracles that he himself witnessed, wonders that witnessed in India as a young man and as a beginner on the spiritual path. And I felt that he was not a kind of person to make up, to fabricate these stories. And he spoke about like a levitating saint, a yogi who could rise up into the air that he saw with his own eyes, and had experience of meeting somebody who he was talking to in one place, and he heard from some of his maybe family members that they were paying homage to that same saint at a city hundreds of miles distant. What did he say? Yeah, there are many things that book convinced me there are many things that are taking place that are beyond our sensory powers of reason and of sensory experience. Yeah. Yeah.
And Ajahn Brahm said he was talking about how it's easier sort of to cultivate these powers away from everyone. He was talking about a monastic who could fly, but then once he returned to civilization, he could no longer fly because he was too distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a story, by the way, that comes in the Pali commentaries. It also shows, I think the story is intended to show the inadequacy of these psychic powers if one hasn't also developed insight and gained wisdom. You're shaking your head, you know the story?
I'm not sure if you got it from the commentaries or from a Sutta, I thought you had explained this, that the Buddha went through these psychic powers
Yeah.
and also the instructions, and he explained that if even you could do psychic powers, the understanding of the Dharma and the teaching of it is what's important.
Yeah. But I wanted to tell the story.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there was a young monk who had this ability to fly through the sky, sitting cross-legged. This was supposed to be in Sri Lanka, and then he was flying over the sky, over the rice fields, and there was a young woman who was planting the seeds in the rice fields, or maybe watering the rice, or collecting the rice, harvesting the rice. And while she was doing this, she was singing a song with a very beautiful voice. And as he's flying over the rice fields, he hears the sound of a voice and singing this lovely song. And then he looks down and he sees this lovely girl working in the rice fields. And then his heart becomes filled with love for her. And he descends from the sky and starts talking to her. And then one thing leads to another, and he winds up disrobing and marrying her. And then he loses his psychic powers. And then there was the other story. Yeah, this was a monk who, he was a well-established teacher, and he had a pupil. The pupil's name was Dhammadina. I don't remember the teacher's name. But he thought that he had attained arhatship, and he also had all of the jhanas and psychic powers. But his pupil, Dhammadina, was living some distance away, and then Dhammadina became a real arhat, and then he thought, let me examine my teacher's mind to find out what his state is. And he used his power of mind reading to read the teacher's mind, and he saw that the teacher was still a worldling, not even a stream enterer, but because of his skill in samadhi, he thought that he had attained arhatship, so there were no defiled thoughts at all. And so Dhammadina thought, let me go to help my teacher, but in terms of the monastic etiquette, it wouldn't be proper for the pupil to challenge the teacher's idea of his own attainment directly. And so Dhammadina had to use an indirect way to make the teacher see his own shortcoming. And so he came to the teacher, paid homage to him, and then he asked the teacher, Bhante, when did you reach the goal? And then the teacher said, let's just say 12 years ago. And then Dhammadina said, and did you gain the psychic powers too? And the teacher said, yes, I have the psychic powers. Okay, and then Dhammadina said, can you create an elephant in front of us? So the teacher said, no problem. And so he used his psychic power, and then in the snap of a finger, there is a giant bull elephant standing in front, some distance away. Then Dhammadina said, can you make that elephant come running towards us? And the teacher said, no problem. And so just with an act of will, he made the elephant start to come running towards them. The elephant gets closer, closer, and closer, coming very, very close. Then the teacher's looking at the elephant coming. He's going to trample us, and gorge us. And so the teacher's face turns pale, and he starts to turn around as if to run away. And then Dhammadina grabs him by the robe and says, does an arhat have any fear? And then with that, the teacher realized that his thought that he had achieved arhatship was mistaken. And so then Dhammadina, the teacher, holds out his hands like this to Dhammadina and says, please help me, please teach me. Then his own pupil teaches him how to develop insight, and then the teacher goes off into seclusion, and then within a very short time he achieves real arhatship. Any other comments on the sutta?
Bante, I have a question.
Yeah.
Things are easy said than done. Just like this teacher, before he become an arhan,
Yeah.
he got the psychic power.
Yeah.
And I assume conceptually he understands 37 Patimokkha, 8 Noble Path,
Yeah.
and things are easy said than done. Does he possess the third wonder, tell people what to abandon, what to do, but he cannot do it himself?
Well, I have to try to apply this to the situation. He would be, as an elder monk who is teaching apparently a whole community of junior monks, he would be telling them, what kind of thoughts to abandon, what kind of thoughts to cultivate, how to attend, which means probably like how to attend to a meditation subject. And so he would be able to guide them in their study and in their practice. So in that way you could say that he has, let us say, a defective form of the third miracle. But he's able to instruct others, and he thinks he's practiced what he's teaching others and accomplished the goal of the practice. But he's just, I guess because he didn't have anybody to sort of supervise his own practice, he's mistaken a state of probably deep samadhi for the attainment of enlightenment. Or it could be what's happened is that, of course, he would know as a learned teacher that the states of deep samadhi are not equivalent to enlightenment, but it could be that he had samadhi together with cultivating insight, and he could have had like a very powerful experience through the development of insight that he took to be the attainment of path and fruit. And that's actually, I've heard of other cases of that happening.
Thank you.
Bhante, I was just thinking of a short passage. It's a longer passage, but in the Vatansaka Sutta,
Yeah,
mind is like an artist able to paint the world.
yeah,
All is but mental construction.
yeah.
It's amazing what the mind, everything is the mind. No?
Actually, that's a very similar idea comes in the Nikayas in, let's see where it is. I think it's in the Sangyutta Nikaya, Nidana Sangyutta, could be Sutta number 64. Well, actually, it's not so explicit, but it says, just suppose that there was a painter or an artist, and then by means of paint, which is different kinds of paints, different colored paints, he would create the image of a woman or a man against a plank or a wall or a piece of canvas. In the same way, when there is delight, when there is lust, delight, craving, then consciousness gets established somewhere. And where consciousness is established and comes to growth, there takes place the descent of name and form. When there is the descent of name and form, then there is an increase in sankharas, volitional activities. When there's an increase in volitional activities, then there is the production of existence again in the future. And wherever there is the production of existence again in the future, there takes place birth, old age, and death. Yeah, and then there's another sutta, so that's one. But how does that tie up to what we were discussing? Anyway, the Kanda Sangyutta, I think it's sutta number 100. Yeah, the Buddha is speaking about a certain painting. Apparently this was a painting that was carried, according to the commentary, carried around through the towns and villages. It must have illustrated the different realms of existence. And so the Buddha asked the monks, have you seen this painting called the Charana? Charana means wandering. And the monks say, yes, Bhante. And then the Buddha says, even that painting called the wandering has been painted or created by the mind, but this mind is even more variegated, differentiated than that painting called the wandering. And therefore one should reflect upon one's own mind, thus often reflect on one's own mind. For a long time this mind has been defiled by lust, hate, and delusion. Okay, I think we should, yeah.
A question from the internet.
Okay, please.
If someone abuses the psychic power to inflict harm and suffering, can their psychic power get affected? Can psychic power end?
If somebody abuses their psychic power?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say so. I've heard of cases of people who have psychic powers and repeatedly abuse them and still retain the psychic powers. But I would think with defiled thoughts, it seems that the psychic powers would fade away. But I don't know, I'm not an expert on that. Okay, so we'll break now for the lunch and the sharing of the merits. And then we'll come back for a short Q&A, a further discussion after the lunch. Okay, so let us stand and let us do the sharing of the merits. Okay, so we share the merits with the devas, the nagas, the bhutas or fierce spirits, asking them to rejoice in the merits and to protect the Dhamma, to protect the world, to protect ourselves and others. Akasata chabhumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabhumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabhumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu, sabba sampati siddhya, etavata cha amhehi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe bhuta anumodantu, sabba sampati siddhya, etavata cha amhehi, sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe sata anumodantu, sabba sampati siddhya, bhavagopadaya avici hetato, etantare satakayupapanna, rupya rupicha asanya sanino, dukkha pamutantu, pusantu nibbutiং. Okay, so we'll continue with reading the Anguttara next week. Sutta we take next week, very important sutta. It's on the three, I think actually the next two very important, sectarian. Actually, it's quite long. It seems almost as if it should have been in the Majjhima Nikaya. Actually, the next few are all quite important and interesting.